Hey everyone, welcome to Mystifying Miracles. Today my story involves an 11-year-old girl who basically had everything going for her. But then, of course, something terrible comes along. It's just a bad time. But obviously, it's going to end miraculously, and I'm going to dive into her story. So stay tuned. Meghan Conner, she was an 11-year-old girl. She had a bubbly, funny personality, lots of friends at school. She was organized, made great grades, and she also played soccer. Her family lived in Southern California, where her dad was a pastor. She also had 2 younger brothers, 1 older sister, and of course, her mother. It was in December of 2008, though, that her world would just kind of come crashing down all at once. Meghan began to be somewhat forgetful, which was very unlike her, and it just progressed and got worse. There was one day that she walked into one of the classes at school and she completely on the spot just forgot where she was supposed to sit. In the weeks following this incident, Meghan began to have like these crying fits, just out of the blue. And her parents said that her behavior was just very atypical. I mean, she was making fun of kids at school, some of the boys in the band, something she had never done before. In addition, Meghan was becoming very withdrawn and panicky, if you will. So she began having these little panic attacks. Her parents, Jim and Linda, finally took her to an ER in early of 2009. She was checked out thoroughly by a neurologist, and he said all was well, seemed normal, nothing wrong, tests great. So he then referred them on to a counselor. 10 days after this event where she was in the ER with her parents, Meghan was on a youth retreat with her church when, while she was away, she ended up having a grand mal seizure. She lost consciousness. She ended up biting her tongue, which led it to bleed. And of course, the parents there at the retreat had to call in the middle of the night Meghan's parents, to which Linda, her mother, made the trip out to where they were to pick her up and take her to an ER once more. On the way, in the car with her mother, Meghan seemed very lethargic. And as her mother's driving, she once again has another seizure to where she's losing consciousness. She's biting her tongue once again, and this time she's also foaming at the mouth. Obviously, this scares Linda. She doesn't know what to do. She's by herself because her husband's at home with the other children. She pulls over on the shoulder and she gets out her cell phone and dials 911. But for whatever reason, it would not go through. The call, she tried over and over. Nothing. She's panicking now, so now she's like, what do I do? What do I do? She calls her husband, and for whatever reason, that call actually goes through. Jim was able to quiet and calm his wife down, and everything's going to be all right kind of a thing. He then directs her to an ER that's not too far away. The next few weeks after that ER visit were hectic. There were more hospital visits. There were more tests run. There were more health scares. Due to all these things, that led to more questions, to more doctors. Meghan's health in those following weeks just worsened to where Meghan was now in like this catatonic state. But around that time that she began to be in that state, doctors finally came through with a diagnosis, and that was SLE lupus. Meghan's antibodies were basically attacking her own brain. Doctors said that left untreated, it could be fatal. And of course, unfortunately, there just wasn't a cure. This left the Conner family just so upset. Doctors also told them that, look, Meghan's going to need aggressive treatment. She's going to need to be on steroids, chemotherapy, amongst other things. And due to the chemo and the steroids, she would gain weight. plus lose her hair. And because she was so sick and the state that she was in mentally as well, she was catatonic basically, they told her, look, prepare yourselves for the next 1 to 3 years. Meghan's probably going to need many tutors because she's going to be missing quite a bit of school. In addition, doctors said, keep her out of the sunlight, take precautions with sunscreen, because of the lupus diagnosis, sunlight can be harmful. In addition, they said, look, she might not be able to have children either. The news was awful, obviously, but the Conners said they had a secret weapon. What was it? Prayer. Jim, her father, began to have these chats with God, and he'd ask God, he's like, Lord, what do I do? I don't know how to help my daughter. Tell me, how can I pray for her? What do I need to do? And he said that he felt God was leading him to pray, to listen, pray for your daughter, that she will first wake up from this coma-like state. And so that's exactly what Jim did. He began to pray that. In addition, many people, when this all was happening, overheard, I guess, all this going on. People in the lobby and strangers actually began praying for Meghan, which just baffled the Conners. They were like, wow. They were touched by that because these complete strangers were offering to pray for their child. The family said, obviously, this was a very dark time. But despite that, they said that they were given a peace that surpasses all understanding. And of course, that was from God, because you look at the situation, anybody going through something terrible like this, you think, how can anybody have a peace like that? You can't. It only comes from God. And thank goodness, the Conners knew that, and they knew how to pray for that, and God gave them that. Soon thereafter, Meghan began to slowly awaken, if you will, to come out of this coma-like catatonic state. It was slow, but it was getting better. And when she finally was, with it enough, she could not communicate, like by speaking. So she would communicate with doctors, nurses, and her family through texting. So she still had that ability to, I guess, write and text. She just couldn't speak when she kind of came out of it. After 12 more days in the hospital, Meghan was finally able to leave. But it was on day 1, where she'd been home not even 24 hours, when Meghan just began to constantly sob and cry. And the reason being, she was having trouble taking her pills. She couldn't swallow them well, and she felt they'd get stuck in her throat, and it would scare her, cause her to panic, and she'd just get frustrated that she wasn't able to take what she was supposed to do. So that's when her dad, again, turns to prayer, and he begins to pray, Lord, help my daughter be able to take this medicine that she needs for her lupus and her seizures and everything that was going on. And he also got a prayer chain started within the church and people he knew to pray for the same thing. And it was the very next morning when things had changed. Meghan came into the room that morning and she said, I swallowed my pills. She was so excited. She said it was easy. She didn't have any problems. They just went down like that. Like no big deal. In addition, this was the first time that Meghan actually spoke words. Because remember, she wasn't able to speak. So she woke up miraculously, being able to talk, being able to ingest all those things that she needed. And after that, her parents say, look, Meghan had great days, but she also had some bad ones. But despite that, she was able to take her medicine, take the other precautions like the sunlight and all those things. So they were making do. Now, Meghan did end up gaining weight, losing hair, and that unfortunately did lead to kids teasing her at school. When June rolled around that summer, Meghan began complaining of back pain. Despite this, though, she was still able to go on vacation with her family and her aunt's family. And so there were 8 kids total, and they all went up to the San Bernardino Mountains and went to a water park that was located there just to have some fun and vacation for a few days. And there at the water water park, there was a slide. It was a 300-foot twisty long water slide. And all the kids were having fun going on it except Meghan because of the back pain. But Meghan begged her mom. She's like, please. I mean, it's summer, it's vacation. Her mom tried to deter her and say, no, that's not a good idea. But Meghan continued to beg. So mom felt bad and said, all right, be careful though. And it wasn't minutes later where mom, oh man, she was regretting that she ever relented and gave in to that, because Meghan came off the slide just bawling, crying hysterically in pain. Linda, her mother, says that Meghan continued to cry in agonizing pain for the next 90 minutes. Soon after their vacation, Linda took Meghan in for a checkup to check on this back pain. The doctor got a CT scan and it showed 18 fractures in Meghan's spine. And he told Linda, he said, oh gosh, this is bad. This is really bad. I really wish you would have come to me sooner and not waited, and I'm not sure how many days or if it was a week after vacation or what, but the doctor said you should have went to the doctor immediately. He said that Meghan's spine, it looked like she was a 60 to 70-year-old woman with advanced osteoporosis. He said, look, nothing can be done. There's no treatment. This is unfortunate, and it's also unfortunate because it's permanent. In addition, he told mom, because some time had passed before they made it into the doctor, Meghan had been on those steroids. And what the steroids do, it robbed all the bones of all the calcium she needed. So you know how you need calcium for your bones? Well, when you have broken bones, trying to heal, which she didn't know she had 18 fractures, obviously. But during that time, she's taking the steroids and her bones aren't getting the calcium that they need when you've got something broken. So that was what led to it looking terrible, like she was a 60 to 70-year-old woman. Once again, the Conners were devastated. Jim, her father, he tells the staff that he works with at the church, he said, look, let's pray together. And they ask God, what can we do? What are the specifics? What do we need to pray for? And Jim heard back personally. He says that he heard a voice of God. He didn't say in the story if that was audible to him or if it was just a feeling like he knew. But basically, God told him, look, I can heal her. And when he heard this from God, he said he envisioned just Meghan's back and he saw it it was straight and perfect and nothing wrong with it. But despite hearing what he needed to pray for, Jim says in that moment, this is his daughter, right? So he was scared. He said he was scared to pray, and he was letting that fear come in because he didn't want to be disappointed. He's like, what if I pray and it doesn't happen? Those kind of thoughts. And that's the enemy putting that in his head. He says, though, over the days, that impression, that vision he was given of Meghan's perfect spine stayed with him. It was always in his mind. And because of that, he finally told the other elders of the church, he said, let's pray for this. Let's continue to pray for this healing. A prayer chain began. Shortly thereafter, Meghan had an MRI done. And it was the next day, on a July 7th, that Meghan had an appointment for her chemo for the month. The doctor came in while she's getting her chemo and he says, I'm so sorry. I was hoping to have the MRI report to go over with you guys today, but unfortunately, I don't. He's like, I did receive a report, but it was the wrong report. So after their chemo appointment was done, Linda takes her home. They're at home and they get a call from the doctor. And he says, Mrs. Conner, I'm sorry, I got the same MRI report again. Could you go down there and pick up the physical DVD and films and bring them to me at Meghan's next appointment? And so that way, the doctor wanted to look at it himself. He didn't know why he was getting the same report. It wasn't right, he said. So Linda says, yeah, sure. She goes and does that. And at the next appointment, the doctor looking at the DVD and all the scans and all that stuff. And Linda notices that the doctor just has this confused look on his face. Oh, also, I forgot to add this in too. In the meantime, between having that MRI report and this appointment, Meghan also had just stopped complaining of the back pain. I mean, she complained daily, all the time, and it had just all of a sudden stopped. And the doctor just said, I don't know how to say this. It doesn't make sense. There's no medical explanation. But Meghan's MRI, it's fine. It's normal. The family was there, her parents, Meghan, and they just looked at each other. They knew. They knew what had happened. 18 fractures. Gone like that. Just an amazing miracle. As of 2009, later that year, Meghan still battled with short-term cognitive issues, and she still had lupus. But despite that, struggling with that and everything, she was still able to make good grades. She even played a season of soccer. And Meghan never needed any tutors. She never missed a lot of school, so she was able to stay with it, with her grades and all that. And despite having the communication issues early on when she was in that catatonic state and everything, she overcame and got so much better because she actually competed in a competitive speech debate. And she won 3rd place. Most important, her health in the meantime had rebounded and gotten better. She never had another back issue again, and they claim that it was a miraculous healing. Meghan's also no longer on steroids or a slew of medicines. She just takes one, and that's to help with her lupus. Jim, her dad, said the doctor used the term, I can't explain it, but basically she's cured. But Jim kind of corrected and he said, I wouldn't say cured. I call it a miracle. So isn't that cool? That's miraculous. I would love, because that last update I found in a miracle book, that was from 2009. So I wish I could know how she's doing today. Like, did God heal her from her lupus too in those years after? Who knows? But I hope she's doing well. And I think that's a wonderful, miraculous story. Let me know your thoughts, or if you've ever had anything similar from these stories that I point out. If it's ever happened to you, share that, because other people can see that and hear testimonies as well. Thank you for watching, guys. I really appreciate it, and I'm going to see you next time.